Hi friends, welcome to my channel. Now, I'm going to tell you about Russian pirates called Ushkuiniks. They were free men from Novgorod. They sailed on their ships on the rivers and seas, engaged in trade and piracy. They made many daring raids on their neighbors and captured the capitals of the Swedish Kingdom and the Golden Horde. Novgorod was an important trade center in the 11th century. It was a hub for trade between Russia and the Hanseatic League. There was a great demand for furs in Western Europe. Therefore, Novgorod merchants had to get them. They equipped squads of free people and sent them to the extraction of furs. These squads moved along the northern rivers and extracted furs from local hunters. Some they bought, some they stole. As they advanced, they set up trading posts, expanding the territory of the Novgorod Republic. The members of these squads were called Ushkuiniks. This name came from the name of their ships. The ship was called Ushkui. It was a small sailing rowing vessel with a shallow draft, a double-ended hull, a steering oar, and a single mast. It was very fast, agile, and light enough to be dragged. Ushkui's crew consisted of about 36 interchangeable rowers. At any moment, they could be transformed into a squad of well-armed warriors. Every winter in Novgorod, squads of Ushkuiniks formed. In the spring, they would set out on new expeditions. The Ushkuiniks were made up of all sorts of people, from the children of aristocrats to poor vagabonds. Each squad was led by an ataman who recruited people for his team. He did it very carefully because the fate of the whole expedition could depend on each person. Therefore, most Ushkuiniks were professional sailors and warriors. Novgorod merchants supplied the Ushkuiniks with food and weapons in exchange for a share of the valuables captured during the expedition. The Ushkuiniks were well armed. They had helmets, chainmails, spears, swords, and sabers, though sabers were preferred. Among the throwing weapons, they had bows and crossbows, both portable and stationary, throwing large steel arrows. With the onset of spring, squads of Ushkuiniks set out on expeditions. No fear, the Ushkuiniks waded along of large and small rivers in search of prey. Many of them died in skirmishes with natives, drowned in swamps, and froze in winter camps, but each year they advanced farther and farther until they reached the coast of the Arctic Ocean. But even here, the Ushkuiniks did not stop. On their ships, they fearlessly went to sea, learned to catch walruses, seals, and polar bears. They mastered the entire coast from the Kola Peninsula in the west to the mouth of the Ob River in the east. By the middle of the 12th century, thanks to the activities of the Ushkuiniks, the Novgorod Republic had become the largest state in Europe by area. And then a dispute arose between it and the Kingdom of Sweden over who would control the territory of modern Finland. The dispute turned into a war. In 1164, Swedish troops landed near Ladoga, but the Novgorodians forced them to retreat. In the year 1187, the Novgorodians struck back. As a troop, they attracted Ushkuiniks, who together with Karelians attacked the Swedish capital Sigtuna and completely devastated it. After this attack, Sigtuna lost its capital functions forever. A silent witness of these events is the famous Sigtuna Gate, which was taken from the capital of Sweden and installed in the St. Sophia Cathedral in Novgorod. But the war did not end there. The Swedes and the Novgorodians constantly raided each other's territories, and Ushkuiniks played a large role in these raids. The raids of varying degrees of devastation took place almost every year. The sticking point was the territory of Karelia. There was no official border in these lands, so both the Swedes and the Novgorodians considered the local tribes to be their tribute. In 1293, the Swedes made a serious bid for dominance in this area, building the fortress of Viborg on the coast of the Gulf of Finland. The Novgorodians tried to prevent this, but the military actions were unsuccessful. In 1300, the Swedes again tried to fortify themselves on the Neva River. They built a fortress at the confluence of the Okta and the Neva, but in the following year, a squad of Novgorodians destroyed it. In 1318, the Novgorodians made a campaign deep into Finland, and Ushkuiniks' squads played no small part in it. The troops crossed the Gulf of Finland by ships, then traveled up the river to the fortress of Abo. There, the Novgorodians burned the cathedral and confiscated the tax collected there, which was destined for the Vatican. Almost all the soldiers returned home safely. In 1320, the Ushkuiniks undertook 2 sea campaigns to the Norwegian coast, as Norway was then in a personal union with Sweden. They landed in the province of Finnmark in the far north, where they devastated Norwegian settlements. In 1321, the Ushkuiniks repeated their campaign to Norway, and again they were successful. This time the province of Hålogaland, located near Finnmark, suffered. In 1323, the peace treaty between Sweden and Novgorod was signed, and the question of borders was officially settled. The Ushkoiniks had no more work to do on the western frontiers, so they turned their attention eastward to the Kama and Volga. There, they plundered caravans and coastal Tatar towns. In 1360, they undertook their first major expedition against the Golden Horde. After traveling down the Volga River, they reached the Kama River and captured the Tatar city of Zhukotin. After sacking the city, they returned to Kostroma and settled there to rest. When the Khan of the Horde found out what had happened, he asked the Prince of Moscow to arrest and hand over the Ushkoiniks. On the prince's orders, the Kostroma boyars got the Ushkoiniks drunk, tied them up, and sent them to the Horde. This event was the beginning of a long conflict between the Ushkoiniks and the Russian princes. In the following years, groups of Ushkoiniks repeatedly attacked princely cities: Kostroma, Yaroslavl, Veliki Ustyug, and Belozersk. In 1375, under the leadership of Ataman Prokop, 1,500 Ushkoiniks defeated 5,000 army of General Pleshchayev and captured Kostroma. After resting in Kostroma for a few weeks, the Ushkoiniks moved down the Volga. There, they visited the city of Bulgar and the capital of the Golden Horde, Sarayberka. The rulers of Bulgar, having learned from bitter experience, paid a large tribute, and Sarayberk was conquered and plundered. In total, from 1360 to 1375, the Ushkoiniks made 8 major campaigns to the Volga, not counting smaller raids. Russian princes and Tatar Khans sent letters of protest to Novgorod, demanding that the Ushkoiniks stop their raids. The Novgorodians wrote back that they didn't know who they were, and that you should take care of them yourself. In 1374, a large group of Ushkoiniks did not return to Novgorod after a campaign on the Volga, but went to the Vyatka River, where they built a city on the site of their small trading post, which they called Klinov. Thus, a pirate republic arose on the banks of the Vyatka. It was similar to the one that would emerge almost 300 years later on Tortuga Island in the Caribbean. Kalinov, which later became Vyatka and then Kirov, was the capital of this pirate republic and the main base of the Ushkoiniks for more than 100 years. Free Klinov grew very fast. The Ushkoiniks arranged everything according to their wishes. In fact, the orders in Klinov were the same as in Novgorod. It had its own people's assembly, but there were no boyars and princes. In order to preserve its independence, the small state periodically allied itself with some princes, but did not obey them. Having received their own state, the Ushkoiniks did not give up their old habits, did not settle down, and continued their campaigns. In 1471, under the leadership of Kostya Yuryev, they once again attacked the capital of the Golden Horde. After the sacking of the capital, the economic power of the Horde was finally undermined. The Free Klinov Republic ceased to exist due to the centralization of power in the hands of the Moscow princes. In 1478, Tsar Ivan III conquered Novgorod and liquidated the Novgorod Republic, and in 1489, he sent a strong army to conquer Klinov. The Pirate Republic was unable to resist such an army. Klinov was forced to surrender. Its inhabitants were punished no less severely than those of Novgorod. Some of them were executed, others were resettled near Moscow, and replaced by a population more loyal to the Moscow Tsar. After the defeat of this republic, the memory of its founders, the Ushkoiniks, was tried to be erased from history. They were mentioned only in rare chronicles and heroic tales. Some of the surviving Ushkoiniks went to the Don and the Volga, where the Cossacks were formed. Later, the customs of the Cossacks were very similar to those of the Ushkoiniks, and their desire for free life and river campaigns was no less than theirs. I'll talk about the origin of the Cossacks in the next program. Subscribe to the channel so as not to miss it. At this point, I wish to conclude this video. If it was interesting, leave comments, put likes, and repost. Thank you for your attention. See you later. Goodbye.